Okay, yeah.
This meeting is being recorded.
Sorry. Okay. Go for it, Glenn.
I suffered a stroke in August of 2018. So if my speech is a little bit bad, they actually think I might have had a small one again a couple of weeks back.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty good to me, Glenn.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm slurring a lot.
We can certainly understand you.
Yes.
It was actually these type of meetings when I first had my stroke that got me speaking again.
Good.
Oh, good.
I had to learn to walk and talk again.
When was that? 2018, did you say, Glenn?
And yeah.
So 4 years ago, yeah. Takes a long time to...
August 18, 2020 it was.
Yeah, okay.
Just lined up with COVID, Glenn.
Oh, it was horrible. I could only see my kids through a fly-wire screen at Golfers Road.
Right.
Yeah.
Shocking.
And you live in Mount Martha?
Live in Mount Martha, yeah.
And when we met yesterday, you said you're interested in getting involved in a few things.
Advocacy, definitely, yeah.
Good.
Okay.
My support worker who's here now, she talked me into doing my search for a disability. So I've done that. I'm just waiting to finish my placement hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had a chat about maybe joining Meals on Wheels for that.
I'm not sure if Meals on Wheels will cover it because you're not actually, you're not spending time with them, you know what I mean? But
oh, okay.
with a trainer.
All right. Well, I've sent a little email to our Meals on Wheels person, but if that's not right for you, we can look at something else.
I just want to change the career path because no one knows can I climb up a gangway of a ship ever again.
Well, look, you should never say never, really, but
No, but all my qualifications have run out. I'm meant to have re-qualified.
right.
And no one knows could I do that. Not with, I've only got one hand working.
Yep. So you're interested in joining the DAC committee?
I'd like to also, I'm interested in becoming an advocate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Virginia?
Yeah, sure. Do you want to maybe just the rest of you quickly introduce yourselves to Glenn so he knows who's who?
Paul doesn't have to introduce himself. Everyone knows Paul.
Well,
Oh, we've just lost you, Paul, the sound.
I just muted myself. Thank you, Glenn. Yes, people know me from some of my acting stuff and food things, but I'm also a councillor for the Mornington Peninsula Council for Watson Ward. And it's been a great honour and learning curve for me over the past year and a half to be part of DAC. And I look forward to working with you.
You're fantastic, yeah.
Karen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, Glenn. I'm Karen. I'm in my 50s. I currently live in Macrae. I have a form of muscular dystrophy and I'm a full-time wheelchair user, and I got into advocacy after having a fall and not being able to walk because my muscles wouldn't heal properly. And I spent time in Golfings Road, and I think that was the most traumatic, one of the most traumatic experiences of my life, but never mind. So I can imagine what it would be like for you during COVID to be going through that.
They were very good up there, though.
Yeah, they wrote me off before I even got to see a physio. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, so that was a bit of a challenge. But anyway, that's my story.
Hi, Glenn. I'm Sandra Orlish, and I joined DAC in 2019 and have experienced the DAC meetings by Zoom, which has been absolutely wonderful. I had presented with a AVM when I was 28, so I've been climbing back from a hemiparetic condition for quite some time now.
Yep.
What's an AGM, Sandra?
It's an arterial malformation in the brain,
Wow. So
and it often occurs in the first 10 weeks of the brain being formed, but nobody knew about it until I was 28.
wow.
And they removed it, or thought that they could, but they also took a third of my primary motor cortex, as well as a piece of dead brain in the frontal lobe as
Gosh.
well. So it's, you know, it's a blessing that I know who I am, Glenn, and I'm smart enough to know what I should do to get well. And getting well is your job now. Forget climbing up the whatever on a ship. Getting well is the option.
First step for sure.
Yep, absolutely. Welcome aboard.
There's a little pun there.
Yes, it was. Thank you for picking it up. Okay, Deb, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Glenn, nice to meet you. I'm Debbie. I also live in Mount Martha and I work on the Mornington Peninsula. I work for the Brotherhood of St Lawrence. We are one of the partners with the NDIA, and we assist people with getting their NDIS plan and connecting and linking in with the community. So I've been part of the DAC for, I joined last year sometime. I've also found it a very interesting process. Great to be able to pass on information to the staff that I work with so that they can pass it on to participants. Great to see when there's been developments in terms of some outdoor spaces being more accessible to people. And I also have a personal interest with a number of friends and some family members with disability.
Thank you. Michelle, hi.
Hello, apologies for being late. I lost track of time, and I've just had a text from Claire to say that she's an apology as well. Her mum has just tested positive for COVID, so she's gone into caretaker mode. Hello, Glenn. I'm Michelle Cheers. I've been on DAC for 3 years, I think now. I guess probably my main role is really to act as an advocate to ensure there's equity and that people have equal access and are included in all that the peninsula has to offer. So that's me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. Welcome aboard, Glenn. It's great to have you involved. My name's Chris Munro. I'm the Manager of Community Partnerships at the Mornington Shire. So it's a bit of a broader portfolio that includes the health and wellbeing, which includes the DAC committee as well. But I've also got volunteer management, community development, early years and youth, and also resilience and recovery, which is part of our emergency management capabilities. I also live in Mount Martha, so we're probably neighbours in some way there, Glenn, but it's really great to have you on board because we really value that lived experience that helps us as a council get better at what we're delivering, and definitely, we want to know how it's received and how users think of what we do. So we really value that experience. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, Pauline.
Oh, hi, Glenn. I'm Pauline Gordon. I'm not normally at these meetings, but it's so welcome to DAC. I'm Director of Community Strengthening with Council. So Chris just spoke, and he's one of the teams in my directorate. So there's 5 teams and community partnerships one, but we've also got all the community services like libraries and customer services and maternal and child health and child and family health. I'm not going to go through them all, but I'm happy to share them with you. We have all the community safety and compliance as well, so development compliance and local laws and animal shelters and stuff like that. We have all arts and culture. And I'm missing a team, Chris, and is it you I'm missing, or have I left? Oh, community facilities and precincts is the other team. So it's pretty well all the external facing services in the organisation, really, I think. So, yeah, and Mark and Tanasi will yell at me for saying that because they're actually not in the directorate, but apologies. We work closely with them. We rely on them. So, thanks.
Sorry, I'm just getting my support worker who wants to come and have a bit of a listen as well.
Yep.
That's fine.
Pull up a chair.
Unfortunately, she's in a moonbird as well. She took her grandkid bowling the other week and he dropped a bowling ball on her foot.
Ouch.
Yes. Virginia, sorry. Did somebody want to say something?
I think it's just background noise.
Oh, okay. Well, Virginia, do you think we will ask Pauline to?
Well, I've just noticed Tanassi's here now.
Oh, okay.
So should we go back to that spot?
Fabulous. Okay, that's a great jumble.
doing a brilliant job.
Well, Tanassi, do you want to introduce yourself to Glenn?
Is he there?
He's muted himself.
Unmute.
We can't hear you for some reason. Check your audio settings, Tanassi. Sometimes.
Where is he?
Nancy, are you at Rosebud?
It looks like he's at home.
At home. We're having enormous troubles with our audio at council today.
Oh.
There's a number of staff that they can look at us and they can hear us, they can't speak.
Why don't we move?
Sometimes when it's Zoom, it causes challenges with people's audio. You're going to try and plug your headphones in, Tanassi?
It's like it, yeah.
Can't hear you. Oh dear.
Shall we go with whom we do have and can hear?
Maybe we should.
Yeah, Pauline, thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Look, I don't want to say too much. I'd rather listen today if I can, but I was pretty excited to come along. Given the fantastic work that's been done on the universal design policy, and certainly seeing council adopt it was a highlight, and I know that couldn't have been achieved unless it was with this group really working hard on getting that across the line. And I know Paul and Kerry are huge advocates as your representatives on council for that. So it was a fantastic moment, but it was a unanimous decision, and regrettably Virginia was actually on COVID leave on the night. So we're really disappointed, but hopefully some of you were listening to that council meeting, and I don't know whether, Paul, you wanted to comment on that anymore. It just was a really special moment for the council too, I think, wasn't it?
It was fantastic. I didn't speak to it. Kerry spoke to it, and Antonella got in as well. Kerry just spoke so eloquently about the process and all of the people on the committee and the work and the passion, and especially also the, I guess, gratefulness to Virginia and Chris and everyone that's worked so hard on it. It was a really wonderful moment. You know, not to spoil the moment, you go, why has it taken so long? So what? It's taken as long as it has, and now we've got it, and it's going to, you know, it will be applied to everything council do now, which is just exciting and as it should be. So it was a great moment, and congratulations to you all.
Yeah. So that really, I think what you're seeing now, you've got a new council, you've got a new exec. I've only been here 19 months. It sounds really weird, but I'm the longest serving director. So that shows you, and I sort of realised that. I was saying it to Chris earlier, you know, that's a short time for a long time to be a long time person. But having said that, I'm 30 years in local government, and this is my 6th role as a director, and I've been a CEO as well. So, you know, having a policy like this to guide the organisation's direction is so critical at embedding universal design in everything we do. And I've had experience with our DAC committees in other areas, or you know, access and inclusion committees, or whatever we call them in different councils. And it comes down to the passion of the group and also the willingness of our teams across the organisation. But what you've achieved is actually embedding that policy now into every single piece of work, just through how you've worded it. It actually means that everything Mark and Tanassi do when they're sitting here delivering our capital works projects, right through to our events and our programs, we have to use that UD lens, and that that's no mean feat for an organisation to rethink. And you've got very, can I say, there's long-term people that work in local government too, that if it's not within their remit where they've worked that particular way in the past, this is now going to help guide them as well. And I think where the benefit comes is having a committee such as yourselves that you can come and ask questions. You can come and test out different pieces of work, and you are really who we look to provide some of that advice back into the organisation. I want to talk about a couple of pieces of work the other thing that we've been working really hard to do, and I was reading your previous minutes, it's no mean feat also to embed this in the council and wellbeing plan. So that's something we worked really hard to do, Chris and Virginia and the team, last year, where when we were developing the vision, but the council and wellbeing plan, it was front and centre of that plan. So it's also adopted in that for the next 4 years as well, in everything we do, and there's some deliverables in that as well as our organisational plan. I know that all sounds gobbledygook when you go through our whole sort of what we have to follow as staff, but we are accountable to deliver on these documents now, and I think that's where you're going to see some reports that come back through. My interest in what I want to talk about with you though is I'm still interested in your priorities, and I was reading your minutes of your last meeting where you said, I think Virginia must have asked, think about what commitments you want from us. Yeah. And I'm interested in understanding what that looks like, but I'm also interested in, my suggestions to you are focus on your priorities and what you really want to achieve on an annual basis, because you have the capacity to do whatever it is you want, not just within the organisation but externally. And some of those examples that I want to talk about that aren't necessarily hard infrastructure, it's also influencing other people. So for me, having just come from Queensland up on the Sunshine Coast, a couple of pieces of work we did where we actually put out programs to businesses and tourism operators to showcase where they, and we would, councils would then go out and highlight and market them as the places to go if they could demonstrate that they had UD principles that they were working to. So we're in a very strong position, not just to influence the stuff that council does, but what other people do as well. And I was listening earlier to something about footpaths. I think you were talking about, Paul, down in Mornington. You know, another piece of work we did was where we actually took local businesses and the councillors out with our committee and, you know, called it Walk a Mile in those feet to say, well, where are you walking? What do those footpaths look like? What do the TGSIs look like? Are they in the right places? Have we got the parking where we need it? Very strongly able to influence then where those pieces of work should next go. I worked with another director of infrastructure, heaven help Mark, but where we went through every footpath with the committee at the time, and you prioritise what were the most important footpaths to you as a collective. They went to the top of the line. But that also helps council, because then when other people come in where there's trips and falls, we can say, well, actually, this has all gone through DAC. So they've prioritised based on the absolute need from a UD perspective, that's our priority. I just want to keep stressing that to you, how much influence and opportunity you have as a collective to shape the whole peninsula, that it's not just council's work. And so we're here for you and with you. Hopefully we'll be able to do some great things. So that policy is only the first step, and I think I'm really interested in, I didn't get the sense I understood the pain points yet. So happy to hang in for as many meetings as I need to also help you through those. I'd love to answer questions or for you to share some insights into what that looks like for you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask you, Pauline, in the Feb minutes, it was mentioned that access needs forms, should be created.
Access needs for, I don't understand, I'm sorry.
Okay, it's a reporting. Virginia, do you know what I'm talking about? Minutes there?
I think so. So we have a lot of different online forms for different things. It might be registering for an event or a service, and sometimes it could be appropriate to ask if people have any access needs on those forms.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So embedding that question into some of our customer experience processes is a really simple thing that we can do, but it would capture a lot of information. And then if people don't know what to do with the response, that's when someone like myself or the DAC could help come up with solutions. But, if we're not asking the question, then we don't know what people's needs are.
And there's such simple ways of doing it. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, Sandra, I didn't understand your question.
Didn't word it correctly.
Yeah, look, and I think that's a really good one, that if that's something you'd like to see, we minute it in here and then we take that back to the responsible officer to action.
Yeah, it's kind of across the board, and I am working with our customer experience team leader, but yeah, there's a lot of areas that it needs to be added in lots of things we do. Yeah.
And there's one other thing, Pauline. The DAC were kindly invited to Yawa prior to the opening, and it was terrific that we were invited. But what I noticed, it had a ramp for wheelchair usage, but it didn't have handles or handrails to get up and down the steps into the front door. I'm just wondering, have they been put in place as yet? Do you know?
I can answer that for you. The handrails have been installed now.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. Yeah. And have the white boulders in the change room been removed, Virginia?
No.
Do we know what purpose they serve?
I can't remember what we got told. I know that DAC identified them as being a trip hazard and that they weren't very well colour contrasted, the white boulders against the colour of the tiles on the floor. So I'm happy to follow that one up again if you'd like.
I would. I see them as obstructive and dangerous, especially if they're wet.
Yeah. So, Sandra, I think those 2 points that you just raised, though, and this is where we have to get better, and why you've got Tanasi and the 2 marks here today as well, is, and I read it in your notes, is really projects coming to you before they get done. And I'm just thinking of the performing arts, the proposed performing arts centre that we haven't started even thinking about the facility. We're still looking at investigating land options. But I was saying to Virginia last week or this week, I can't remember, the days are blurring at the moment. This group is critical to the success of such an amazing facility like that, because you don't want it afterwards where you're starting to go, what is that white boulder, and its impact on people. We need to think all that through in advance. That's part of them. What I'm looking at Tanasi and the team there. That's part of their brief, that this group's already thought that through, and so that they know what they're working with. And I can see Karen's got her hand up for me. Sorry.
Yes. So I guess I want to congratulate everyone on the universal design policy, and I do note that the policy sponsor is listed as you being the manager of community partnerships, and you're responsible for overseeing the application and review of the universal design policy. And you obviously have a huge portfolio as under your directorate. Yeah. How are you, or what steps are going to be involved in encouraging a whole of organisational approach in adopting those principles, and how are you going to be able to identify the barriers and do the problem solving and things like that? And how does, I know that we say that the DAC is really important in that stage, but there's a whole other bigger picture that needs to be addressed, and things of co-design and also the capacity building and talking to the right people, and there's procurement of things. So it's a huge, big picture that needs to have some kind of ability to reach beyond just the community partnerships section, and to ensure that it goes throughout the whole organisation. And I guess my concern is that how is that going to be implemented, and do you have the time capacity to do such a thing?
So I'm happy to start, and then Chris can play too. Three of our colleagues are on the screen that aren't from my directorate at all, that have also embraced the policy. So once council adopts a policy, and we've got, I don't know how many policies we've probably got about 30 or 40 or probably more, I don't know. But once council adopts a policy, that is ingrained in the organisation. So I need to start at that higher level where we're then all accountable. It doesn't matter if you've got, there's only 3 directors, Karen. So we've all got big portfolios, but there is a responsibility from each of us in our work, but also in each officer of an organisation like ours, that they adhere to those policies. We all sign up to it when we commence. So everyone's got a role to play in that. We'll certainly have a project control group internally that with people from all over the organisation that will be on that. And each director is then, and each manager, of which there's 18 managers, so just to sort of give you a bit about our organisational structure, is then also responsible for reporting back on how that works within their area. So I'm talking more, and I mean, this is the year for it. If I've ever seen a year of massive cultural change in local government, it would have to have been in the last 2 years. Our gender equity work, our universal design. I mean, COVID in itself has changed the way that local governments think and react and respond. And of course, the Change the Local Government Act itself and, the whole deliberative engagement has changed. Like for me, and given I'm such a big social justice person, it's all for the better. But it's been a long time coming. So if I had have thought that all this change could have come about as quickly as it has, I would never have imagined it, but I'm absolutely delighted with it. So our responsibility, and then that goes through Chris and through Virginia, we all are accountable and have to report on that, as does Paul and Kerry as representatives of this group. So it's so good when you have a committee like this that you can check in with, though, that is representative, because we also have citizens panels. That's it's new for local government, really. I was actually on the review of the Local Government Act that sort of made that happen. So I'm really pleased now to see it in action. So those committees should also have the right people on it, the right percentage of people representing all universal access as well. So we're making sure that that's happening as well when we build. We've got to build it into everything. I hope that's answered, Karen. I don't know if I've left anything out, have I?
Well, you actually raise an interesting point with those citizen panels, because many people with disabilities still aren't comfortable doing face-to-face stuff yet. And like I saw that there's quite a few meetings that were face-to-face and requirements of that. And like I think that there needs to be more work done on ensuring that things are hybrid, ensuring that you do have people with who identify as having a disability that are on those committees, and that are doing work within the disability community, to understand the challenges as well. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think there was a couple that ended up, I know there was one that ended up in a hybrid model just recently. So, but I can certainly pass that back to the team that are working on engagement around those panels.
Karen,
I'll let, sorry,
I was just going to, perhaps if I can jump in as well and talk to a little bit more about how we'll go about looking to implement it, because obviously, one thing, we've got a great policy and the policy is at a great principles level, but now it's about how do people know how to bring that into their everyday jobs with whatever tasks and work they do. So The approach we're going about it is we're going to have a project plan that's headed up by sort of that project sponsor working group, which, as Pauline said before, and Virginia's been working really hard on an implementation plan. So we'll have all specifics that'll go right across the organisation. Now, what's different for us this time, which is really great, is that this time we have an organisational plan with the process where we're able to build that into each and every officer's individual work plans. So things like, if we're updating our events, say forms or processes, that'll go into someone's individual work plan. So we're going to take all those actions in the implementation plan, put them into our system, which will go right across the organisation, and that'll be our way to help implement it and drive it across the organisation, but it's also our way to report on it. And people report back and say, how are we tracking, how are we going, how are we delivering on all these things. So there's a lot of work we've got to do, and I'm not going to lie, it's still going to take some time, and we mightn't get it all right. There'll certainly be some probably mistakes made along the way, but we've got a lot of work to do with our culture. It'll be about our training. There'll be guidelines to back it up and support people in different roles. And Virginia's already done a mountain and power of this work. There's still a bit more to go and to do, but ultimately, yeah, that's kind of the approach on how we're going to go about it. So it's not just we've done the policy, here it is, try and go and deliver it. We're really going to support the organisation through training, through guidelines, through that level of support. And I think the DAC will play a really, really great role, because there'll be times when we're not sure which way to go and when we need that advice. So we'll be bringing some things back. But ultimately, yeah, we'll move now into an implementation plan, which we'll be able to share with you down the track, and that's how we'll go about implementing it. So hopefully, go Sandra, yep.
Do you have a timeline for that implementation plan?
Look, we probably haven't sat down and got a hard and specific timeline, but it's from now into next financial year is when we want to start to really align that with our usual organisational planning process, because we're usually on a financial year kind of process. So our goal now is to build that into the organisational plans for next year, and then we can start to work through that in the next financial year, and that gives us that reporting cycle as well. I think ongoing there'll be things across the next few years and that'll take longer, but there'll be things that'll we can get on with now. So yeah, it'll be a bit of ongoing, but yeah, that's how we hope to go about it, Sandra.
And can I just add one more thing, and then I'll how does the CEO know who reports to the CEO with all of this wonderful individual system in place? What's the flow, and how did DAC know that what we're putting forward, asking for, or advocating for is in motion?
So I can probably answer that.
Yeah.
So I sit on the executive team. So my role is one of 4 people. So John, our CEO, and then there's 3 directors, of which I'm one of. We meet every week. And so we sit and we go through all of the key aspects of the organisation. It is a multi-million-dollar org, and that's our role, to deliver on what council sets as the direction for us. This is one of those pieces of work, again, as I was saying, that that council have determined is embedded in the org. So we, through our reporting, we do quarterly reports back to council, and so the staff all present it back to executive, and we sit there and go through it. So at that point, Sandra, you'll see some outcomes in that where staff report up, and then we in turn report to council.
Thank you. Virginia, have you got something you'd like to add to that?
Look, I will at the end, but Debbie had her hand up as well.
Debbie,
so,
sorry, I didn't see that.
Thanks.
That's okay. I'm first of all, I'm very reassured, Chris and Pauline, to hear how a universal design is being embedded within council, and I agree with you that it has wide opportunity for wide influence in the community, not just within council services. I'm pleased to hear that the work through the implementation is progressing. I think we have an opportunity to ensure that we have clear timelines of when this DAC committee are going to get reports on progress, which includes achievements and challenges, so that we know what progress is being made. And I also think we have an opportunity to inform the community. So I think we need to have ways in which we are sharing information, perhaps through social media, of where achievements are, as well as a feedback loop on where priorities are. And I'm also very conscious that part of the education process is that sometimes people have blinkers on, that disability is physical disability, and don't necessarily see that we're talking about not just buildings being accessible and open spaces, but that services are. And sometimes when there's mental health issues or cognitive problems or intellectual disabilities, that they also need to be considered how we are ensuring services in the community is accessible. So yeah, just to say, I think that there is some challenges in terms of education and culture change, as you said, and also very clear on having accountability that we're actually hearing on progress. So thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Would anybody else like to comment on either Pauline's delivery or Mark or Thanasi's?
Oh, we might wait for Mark and Thanasi.
To come on board after. Okay.
I just wanted to touch on a couple of things. So once we populate the project plan, there'll definitely be timelines associated with that we can share with you. And I agree, Debbie, you know, a regular reporting. I think quarterly works quite well, because that's when, you know, we have to do it to exec and council. And I was in the habit of writing a quarterly report to yourselves in the past also. So if you're happy with the quarterly report, I think the timing of that, monthly is just a little bit too quick and 6 monthly is a long wait. So if that sounds reasonable, I think that's probably an achievable time frame. And the other thing I just wanted to touch on is something that we discussed yesterday, Pauline, around councillor delegates on DAC reporting back to council, and just yeah, some ideas around, apparently there is an agenda section at council meetings for councillors to do that reporting back, and it doesn't get utilised as well as it might. So Paul and Pauline and Chris, do you have any thoughts on whether we might want to start implementing a bit of a report back, even if it's just a summary of the minutes?
Yeah, so Paul, sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here, but I was suggesting to Virginia yesterday, we're not, as officers, we're not giving the information to Paul and Kerry in a way that summarises the outcomes of this meeting, because they're, again, your biggest advocates to the rest of the councillors, that they want to go and take back a summary of what you've discussed and the type of you know, opportunities, as you were just mentioning, Debbie. It's so important that you use their representation on this committee to inform the other councils as well. So that was just a suggestion I came up with that I thought would be really good. Sorry, Paul, didn't run that one past you first.
Oh, thanks. It's an interesting one. I'm going to be brutally honest. Often when councillors come back and do a report on one of their delegations, they can be incredibly dry and very boring and way too long. And in the midst of a council meeting, and I'm sorry well, I'm not really sorry. I mean, that's just the truth as I see it. Sometimes when you're on the outer and then you get a report, you don't really know what the report is about. And the report is usually sort of positive and talks about stuff that's happened, but you're still not really clued in. I think there's better ways of cluing in the councillors. I talk to some of the councillors about the meetings and what's exciting and what's happening. I mean, I think it's almost like I'm more than happy if we can put a newsletter together or a very brief email that goes out to all the councillors to say, hey, this is what we achieved, this is what was discussed, and people can look at it and read it at their leisure. I'm not fully convinced that a report presented at a council meeting is the most informative and interesting way to go. And I'm not sure whether it captures the imagination in the way we would sort of like them to. So that's sort of where I would be at. I think we can do it in a different way and much better.
It's good feedback. Thank you. don't want to just create more reporting for the sake of it. And
Yes.
I agree, it has to be engaging.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly don't mean to, create more reporting for people, but but if you were going to help put a little report together that I would then speak at as a council meeting as a catch up, I think it would be better actually going to each councillor so that they can read it at their leisure and question it, and we can, because what it's really more about is letting people know what's going on, but also having conversations. And when we do this in the council meeting, there's not a conversation. It's just a fairly one-dimensional report. So,
yeah, we might do both, Paul.
Sure.
Yeah, we might, only because it's good to table it in the public environment. That's what that's meant to be used for. But take your point perfectly about they need a bit more information. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are we moving on to communication boards?
Just if no one, has anyone else got questions for Pauline at this point?
I didn't see any hands up.
No.
No?
Last
No one?
chance. Okay. Pauline, I'm not sure how long you're able to stay for, but if someone's got a question, they might think of it later. You're happy to field those. Great, thank you. Sandra, why don't we skip to Thanasi's item?
Okay.
Just while they're still here, I think
Still
you might
here.
have a meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, fantastic. I just want to start. Apologies for starting in late at this meeting. Things are a bit hectic at this end, but I'm here for the Rye Foreshore, just to give everyone an update on that project. Let's see, because I don't really drive Zoom, but I think I'll be able to achieve it. Hopefully that's the right page there. Let us know if you can see that.
It just says you've started screen sharing with, oh, yep.
Oh, yep.
We've got it now.
So yep. I'm on a bit of a go-slow with my connection, so I do apologise. So basically, if I'll zoom right out, we'll start at the peninsula sort of scale. We've got right down here, Dundas Street, which is that main street, and it's got the New Wave, the cleaner on one end, and this end is where Woolies is in the big car park as you come in from the Rosebud end. So basically, we've got White Cliffs up here. There's a big development. I'm not sure to what extent everyone knows about the project. So I can give a quick high-level overview. Basically, we've got White Cliffs and we've got some campgrounds, and then we've got the boat ramp. Might actually help if I do this. Let's see how we go here. Yeah, that will be much better. So we've got some camping grounds here. We've got the big boat ramp car park and the boat ramp, the big ride pier that's currently being widened and rebuilt by Dell. And we've got the playground area right here, and then you've got some more foreshore camping as you come across to Rye, and then you sort of just got all the foreshore reserve area towards Rosebud. So this project is basically going to be revitalising the foreshore all the way from the campgrounds at about White Cliffs, all the way across to the campgrounds in front of the Woolworths at Rye, down in this space here. And it's good that this image actually does have the campers in there, so it's a summer picture. So I'll jump across to, why can't I see it now? Because it's hidden. Does anyone, oh, there we go. Fantastic. I can move that off. So this was the master plan that was adopted by the council back in August last year. And it basically, I'll zoom in. Computer's a bit slow. Apologies. So basically what we're doing is we're fixing up the existing campgrounds in the west of the main foreshore reserve, and basically making sure that they've all got power and water, so they're going to be service sites in this space. Why isn't moving? Of course. We've got the midsection here, which is containing basically the existing playground that was going on a limb here, but I'm pretty sure it was built by the Lions Club and the community back in the day. So these works here are going to show, are going to consist of us relocating the existing, this side of the car park here. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor. I hope you can.
Yes.
And then that's going to basically flip on the back on this side. We aren't planning on touching the jetty or the boat camping in that space at all. There is some proposed future strategies with the toilets, but we're not touching any of that amenity at the moment. And we're reconfiguring the bay trail to basically come in and through, instead of sort of what's happening at the moment is they're sort of jumping across where the boats are, and there's then zigzagging where all the swimmers are on this end of the foreshore. So they're sort of being redirected down this way, and then just sort of coming through here along this back way, and then onto the bay trail further along. And then in the eastern end of the foreshore, we've got a few formalized, you sort of call them, accesses that already exist, but it's about us coming in basically with a bit of fencing treatment, blocking off some of the existing ones and more formalizing the other existing ones, so that we can have a bit of more consistency, as opposed to the goat tracks that currently go through the bushes into the from the beach through the scrub. What we're doing is we're going to be removing a large portion of the existing camping, and the remainder is just going to remain as it is, which is less formal than the rest of the reserve, but they're non-powered and non-service sites from that element. And we are also formalising a gravel car park in this area, which is, it's currently being used in that fashion by the local community and the campers during the summertime. So we're just going to really formalise that space there. And I did forget to mention that there is a horseshoe car park in this space over here, which is to the eastern side of the existing playground. And that is going to be bent down. These big pine trees are going to remain, and the car park's going to be built between the pine trees and Point Nepean Road. In there, we're going to retain the existing crossover in that space. And then there's also, which I believe is coming to council soonish, Doug's from the traffic team's also working on a reconfiguration of Point Nepean Road in the same light. So we're across that, as well as not to affect our works in the foreshore space. From a accessibility point of view, I'm trying to get my words right, Virginia. I do apologize to everyone here if I'm not using the right terms. Please correct me, because I want to make sure I'm using the right terms and I'm not saying the wrong words and accidentally insulting people. So from an accessibility point of view, all the path networks that we've got going on. So these works also include, you guys, if you've been down to Rye in the last year or so, you would know that Napier Streets had that was sort of stage 1A of the big redevelopment. And as part of that work, I'll sort of zoom in, but number 2 here, it's a big pedestrian operated signal. It's known as POS. And that is basically, at the moment, it's this small little crossing point here opposite is at Volcano and Prosses, just that area to get across to the foreshore. That is actually going to be relocated further up towards the Blairgowrie end of Point Nepean Road, to where the existing crossover is at the moment to get into the car park, and that's going to become a big scramble crossing. So hit the button, and then you're just going to have this really large crossing, and you'll be able to come in, and we're going to have a nice flat forecourt area. And then from that, it's going to be a bit of a, well, do you want to go up the pier, or do you want to come across into the open space where we're going to have, accessible pathways down here, and barbecue facilities and chairs and tables and stuff for use in the foreshore area, or, if you want to jump onto the bay trail. So I think a good way, the way I'm sort of envisaging it, the way that I've been told it's going to look is sort of not the same materials, but it's going to potentially have that same feel that, I don't know if you guys have been down to the St Kilda foreshore, where you have that big mixing of bicycles and beachgoers and pedestrians and joggers, where you've got that large expansive area, the really wide paths, you know, everyone sort of mixing in and just milling around, basically. That's how sort of, that's how large that space is going to be in that area. I did ask a question to the project team about well, how about, is there any accessible works for amenity and for camping? And the answer was no, that wasn't part of the original brief. And then my question was, well, can it be done? And they're like, well, if you're going to do that, you'd have to make the entire campsite accessible, and then you'd have to make all the connecting path network accessible, and then the amenities themselves accessible. So that in itself is a whole nother project when it comes to the accessibility options for anyone that's camping. So I hope that sort of covers off what this project is sort of about. And yeah, happy to field any questions.
Thanasi, it might be good to make people aware that the red type is not being funded at the moment, that's waiting for later funding, so that people know exactly what will happen with this sort of round, where there actually is funding. I think everyone's aware within the project team that we have been asking for quite some time to make sure that there was accessible camping. I mean, Parks Victoria and others do it quite well. They don't have to sort of go the great big megabucks. It's a very, very simple process. And it's very difficult to understand why it's been left out, because community has asked for this. There's a lot of things in this plan, as you know, community doesn't want, but I won't go into those here. But accessibility and inclusion were things that they were asked for in the township plan. So it's not, because this plan was not done with community, it was done internally over COVID, this is some of the issues that are coming up. So I think to build inclusive camping in is a must.
Thanks, Michelle.
Can I ask about what the floor covering is on the playground, where you just described the wide access from across the road and then into a shared path, and it was right beside a playground. What is the flooring on the playground, please, Thanasi?
Yeah, the playground's not being touched. It's as it is, and currently it's a tan bark finish with some areas of rubberized. There's a volcanic rubber, Mark. I don't know the special terms. The stuff that you can fall on, but majority of that space is soft fall.
Soft fall rubber, usually we call it. Yeah.
It was never, that playground was never built to be accessible.
Unfortunate that that's not included in getting access to the park, but then not being able to get access to the playground.
Yeah, I share your thoughts on that as well. But see, a lot of this project, and I don't want to be blunt, but basically a lot of this project has come down to what the original planning phase went through. And Mark, I'm not sure if you know the year that it started in, the initial consultations.
Not the year, but it was probably planning was a bit lean. It was a submission to GSF for funding, so it was fairly minimal. I wouldn't say minimal, but the planning could have been a lot better. So there was no, as I say, universal design considerations at that point. Environmental management to an extent. It was a bit lean on a few aspects, and certainly if the project that had been done now, initiated now, would have been looked at very differently. So it is an historical project, and unfortunately for us, those people that were involved in the project back in those times have moved on from their current position. So we're kind of putting pieces together and doing the best we can to make it work.
Sandra, sorry.
Doesn't make sense to me, Mark.
Yeah.
You're spending the ratepayers' money on updating things that were planned X amount of years ago without universal design embedded?
Certainly, the path network is an easy thing to incorporate accessibility into, and we can do that. It's just the stuff that's playground, which is a pre-existing playground. It was never planned to touch the playground. It's probably a bit of lack of understanding at that point. It was an asset that wasn't built by council. So it's I think to an extent we're playing catch up, and we certainly want to undertake and work with Virginia to do the best we can to bring that across, but certainly the funding opportunities aren't there to cover that at this point. So we can pursue further funding to get those things done. But yeah, we're at a point where we're sort of attempting to put the pieces together and make it fit to the current requirements and expectations. Yeah, so as I said, we'll work closely with Virginia. Virginia's on the project team, and we'll make that best as best we can. But yeah, certainly path networks are an easy thing to do, and we will do that.
And Tharanasi, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name.
That's okay. That's all right.
Shocking. You mentioned future toilet.
Yes, that also falls into the realm of future funding as well. The existing amenities that are there were never to be touched as well. So, and I do understand that the infrastructure planning team are working on Virginia, help me out with this one, I'm not sure, it's a toilet strategy for the entire peninsula. So they're actually in the process of auditing every single toilet block across the entire Mornington Peninsula Shire. And from that is going to stem a larger project.
No, that the auditing work's been completed, so we're expecting a report soon, but the continuation of writing a toilet strategy is not happening because that position, the funding was only short term and the person's moved to a different team. So it could take years for another toilet strategy to be developed at this point. That's my understanding.
That was Belinda's one, wasn't it? Yeah. I think that's a big loss.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah. So yeah, there was, there was, but we need the planners to come forward and say, well, actually, we need a changing places at this location, or we need to have this as an accessible, you know, and then from there, project delivery will easily be able to come in on top of that and just deliver exactly what's been planned forward on that space.
Okay.
Sandra, can you see Karen and Pauline's hands up?
I can. Karen,
Okay.
please.
I'm just kind of, my point goes to a bit of who's assessing and identifying the barriers and choosing, prioritising of works. So Rye is a great example of, I think that, I'm not sure that removal of the camping ground there was even in part of the original township plan or whatever it was that they're basing the thing on. But to me, it's like if you're looking at a whole space and what people do in a space, that whole area, like we've got in the disability inclusion plan, identify a foreshore camping area to incorporate accessible features. Now, we could have left that campground there. We could have upgraded a changing places toilet as part of that overview, and we could have had more accessible camping options for people with disabilities. And I think it's a bit of a misconception that you have to have totally accessible paths of travel along every linkage and things like that. Like I've camped down at Wilson's Prom and there's no footpaths or anything like that. It's just like crushed gravel and things like that. So you kind of, you know, you have sort of, I don't know whether we're setting expectations and things a bit too high about what is involved in making things accessible, or whether we're not, or whether there's things that we feel, yeah, I don't know. So I know that there needs to be an accessible path of travel, but does it need to be concreted paths of travel? And when we're talking about what works we want to do, like as Pauline mentioned beforehand, it's coming to DAC far too late for us to have any input whatsoever.
Meaningful, yeah.
And I think that you're talking about it being like St Kilda. Well, St Kilda has a changing places toilet, and it has the capacity to have beach wheelchairs and things like that to make it accessible. So,
yeah,
you know,
correct.
there's things that have been chosen or prioritised that have been prioritised for people who are not disabled, and the disabled people have been totally left out from this whole conversation.
Yeah, and I do understand the St Kilda thing as well. So that changing places came in with the Life Saving Club, which was delivered in 2016 from memory, and then and the beach matting as well from that space. So if that's something that we could help push through the planning aspect, saying, well, is this a ideal candidate for beach matting, and which we do have the beach matting down at Rye from memory. You know, is that the perfect connection point? Like we say, well, let's get a changing places, we'll get the accessible paths, and we'll do all this additional works to that foreshore space. I think maybe do we start advocating for it from now, you know? Because you know, and Mark touched on it, you know, we are locked into these legacy projects, you know, and we're slowly flushing them out, but, you know, we're getting there. And if it means, you know, there's, I'm not sure, like we'd have to go back to council, wouldn't we, Mark? And that has its own ramifications on the project.
Yeah, we would need to go back to council to seek direction, but there's certainly scope to review aspects of the project, and we've done that with Michelle advocating for car parking closer to the pier previously. So that's happened, where originally we proposed to remove the complete horseshoe car park around the pier area. So that's now been reinstated, and an additional row of car parking put that next to it. So it does provide greater accessibility to the pier area. So there's opportunities, we can pursue that. And as I said, make it an old project, make it work for the current requirements, current times. So just reiterate that, we sort of keep working with Virginia to kind of get the best outcome.
Chris, you had your hand up before?
Not my hand up in particular, but I was just going to say that we think that Rye is an ideal location for changing places, and we spoke about that before. So it's certainly something we'll keep on the agenda for working with our infrastructure planning team, because I think that's an ideal location for all that.
And Sandra, Pauline had her hand up as well.
Pauline, sorry. You're on mute.
Yeah, I realise that. Thank you. So this is a perfect example for me where I have amazing faith and belief in our two Marks and tenacity to make this happen, and that's where they need my level of support to come in and say, finish it properly. I'm a huge fan, and if we do something, we do it well, and we do it that it's inclusive of everyone. So if we use that again, you've got our UD, this is more my support, showing you've got amazing staff in the room at the moment that care so much about getting it right for everyone. It's where then they need that level of support from myself and from council. We just drop off another toilet block. I was looking at so many toilet blocks yesterday in the budget. I'm going nuts. And I made the comment that we seem to be looking at future amenities in a big way, which is great, but let's make them inclusive. And because the team, our colleagues, they want to be proud of the work they do too. They don't want you to second sort of say, oh, I wish we hadn't done that. We all get incredibly proud when we deliver something that we do it well. So this is a perfect one for me. Let's get the costing on the toilet block and on the play space, and we'll bring it back to exec.
Okay. Does anybody else have something to add to that?
I just would probably explain to Glenn what a changing places toilet facility is. He might not know. It's actually a larger toilet that has an adult change table and also a hoist, so for people that can't transfer onto a toilet. And I'm one of those people, when I'm out in the thing, I need a changing places toilet. So
quite interesting. I was speaking to Virginia. I've got a caravan up at Lake Eildon, and there's no disabled facilities at all. There's no ramps leading to their cabins that they hire out, nothing. She's giving me the human rights contact.
Yep.
We were discussing.
Yep, same topic, different place.
Yeah, we had a guy in the caravan park who was in a wheelchair. He asked for a disability toilet, and the parks at my owners turned and said, "No, you've got facilities. You've got sewage behind your caravan. Build your own."
Wow,
A
unbelievable.
bit harsh. Okay.
It basically said the same to me. It said, for $7,000, we'll put sewage in behind your caravan, Glenn. Yeah, like I was pulled out of the air and get it done.
I just wanted to mention, if I can just go back to what Pauline was saying, it's great to have you at this meeting here, Pauline, and I think that the DAC need to feel empowered that when staff come and have plans that have already been approved and therefore they've already been given the direction that they're going, that we need to be able to be in a position where we say, appreciate that, but we just need to hold for a moment and go, it might have been a great idea 5 years ago, but we now know it's not suitable. So how do we go through a process of revising it? Because I know that behind the scenes, this is going to be a major headache for Chris, Mark and Thanasi. But it's great to have your support. And I think that we need to make sure it's minuted in this meeting that if staff get the feedback from the DAC that a project is not going to meet the universal design policy that's now been adopted, that we have ways of supporting them to get that assistance to rejig a project that's already been approved to make sure that it is meeting it. Because I agree, we want to be proud of what we're doing and we don't want to be flying the flag and letting the community know here's this great development, but hold on, it doesn't quite meet the needs of all people, only some people. So we have to take that time to redo things. So really appreciate that you happen to be at this meeting, and I don't expect you to be at everyone, but we need to make sure it's in our terms of reference of how we operate, that the DAC and the senior staff in the council and the councillors can actually challenge old decisions if that doesn't meet the current policy. So
yeah, thanks, Debbie. And I think for all our team online, that's what the project implementation or the policy implementation team will enable, particularly our guys that are delivering or building this infrastructure. It will give them some peace of mind, because it's not just about me sitting in a meeting. This policy has achieved that. So we can go back and challenge, and it will mean for council less projects but finishing them well. And that's what's really important.
Agreed. Thank you.
And the good thing is like, this is one piece of the million-piece jigsaw puzzle that we're working with. And in the last 12 months, there's been a lot of progression in this space to be able to, say, well, actually, do we have accessible pathways? Do we have accessible amenities? Do we have a changing places? Is it relevant for this site? Have we, considered our environmental policy? Have we considered, all our other policies? What do the local community want? What's their feedback in this initial phase? And that's, I think, where a lot's growing, and especially with cultural heritage as well, that there's been a lot of movement in that space. So now we're doing all those checks and balances, whereas, historically, they were always left right at the end of the project when we were trying to deliver it. Now we've brought them all the way back right to the beginning when we're actually planning these. So moving forward, there's going to be a lot better control over the project and the budgets and understanding and delivering for the community, which is really good. And from a design point of view, being able to lean on your new policy is fantastic, because typically if there's no policy there, it'll become a nice to have, not a need to have. So if it's a need to have, great, it's in and it stays in and it won't shift.
Okay, thank you.
I guess to add from what Tanasi and what Chris was saying earlier, so Chris was talking about implementation of the policy from an officer level. Council will have restructured recently, so we now have I think it's called a programs and projects office, manager office. So there's a lot more rigor over projects and submissions for funding for those projects. And another piece of work that they are doing is looking at implementing a project management system. So that's building little gates into a project all the way through the project. So you can't progress into the next stage of a project until you've ticked those gates off. So there'll be gates early on in projects which deal with, as Tanasi said, cultural heritage, your universal design, your ESD, all sorts of stuff that puts together the proper planning that should go into a project, rather than relying on Officer A, who might do it different to Officer B. So it's a consistent system, not just for us in our department, but someone over in another department that wants to take a project on and hasn't ever done a project. There's a system there and a system to follow, which is consistent.
Okay. So that means then we can put a stop to an antiquated planning project.
Yeah.
Good, excellent. Virginia, shall we move on from?
If you're ready.
Yeah.
How are people going? We've kind of gone all over the place today, haven't we? But I think it's important that we've had these discussions.
I think it's been wonderful to have this discussion.
Yeah. Maybe if Mark and Tanasi have got other meetings to go to, let you.
I'd certainly be interested in being involved in future meetings as well. So
great.
Good to go.
Minute back, for goodness sake.
I have to run, but I have to run, but Virginia is a wealth of information for me, and I always lean on her when it comes to accessibility. And I think sometimes she gets a bit frustrated with me. But yeah.
You're a good one, Tanasi. At least you come and talk to me.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mark and Tanasi. It's great.
Thank you. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.
And Sandra, I might take my leave. I'm in the middle of writing a very strong email to my director colleagues about putting in a accessible play space and change place toilet. So I might keep doing that.
Thank you. And thank you for your time today. It's been really fantastic.
No, it's great meeting you all. And if I can pop in, I'd love to.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. So, Virginia, shall we move on to do people want to take a break, or it's now 2:18? How do we feel?
Can I just say?
Yes.
Well done.
Yeah, that was not what I expected.
That was a fantastic meeting.
Okay, if everyone's all right to keep going, it seems like no one's desperate for a break. Hi to Dee, because you joined late, and Kelly. Thanks for coming on. But I was just going to quickly update you about the communication boards, and I haven't heard from Sally. I thought she might be at our meeting, but there's been some emails back and forth, and there are 3 more going in the near future. So Dramana's the first one. There's been a playground upgrade there. Another one at Mount Eliza and Mount Martha. So they're all definite. And then we've got some more flagged for parks in Somerville, Safety Beach, Sorrento and Rye.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's positive. And
could I ask you about the picnic table update?
I don't really have anything to update on picnic tables at the moment, but what I would like to suggest is we're developing universal design guidelines for a lot of different things in the built environment, and I think picnic tables is something that we should tackle as a group with all the other relevant departments that have responsibility for choosing and installing picnic tables, because they come from here, there and everywhere. So I think a working group on picnic tables is probably what we need to to agree on a style. And Mark, I don't know if you've got any responsibility for picnic tables.
Yeah, on a project by project basis. We have had some discussions previously. So we've developed a standard timber picnic table, which has the overhang on the end. And then we've worked out with Jane and the maintenance team that for high profile places, we'll pick a product for that area. So Rye has a themed picnic table rollout. Yeah, they've come up with a standard drawing for picnic tables in general. And I know.
Can I ask if it has the crossbar that you have to throw your leg over?
I'll have to have a look and let you know. There's a few of them around. But I guess the hiccup has been historically is they'll put a pad down around the table, like a concrete pad, but won't provide any linkage to that pad. So it's a cross-country exercise to get to the accessible table.
Yeah.
So I can source out that drawing and send it to you, Virginia, and you can just.
That would be handy. And I think there needs to be a bigger discussion because the slab isn't always required.
Yeah.
And so there's certain elements that potentially could be part of every picnic table, not just in high profile ones. So yeah, I think a big discussion is.
I know that the slab is preferable because if it's just in like a grassed area, you'll tend to get like a concentrated kick out area with feet. So you end up with divots over time, even though if it is installed and it's nice and flat over time, that'll kind of degrade as the grass gets kicked away and the ground gets eroded. So yeah, some sort of at least a stabilized surface is preferable. So it does stay that way. Yeah.
Okay.
I think the concrete pad that's in that design is way too big.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if you work it, I think through user testing, you can actually eliminate some of the concrete that goes with that.
So benefit from me being here already. So it's great. We can present the drawing and refine that design.
Thank
That'd
you.
be great.
Set it up as a
Can I invite
drawing.
you to the next meeting next month, Mark?
Yeah, definitely.
You're on.
Yep.
Can I just give an update on the inaccessible picnic tables in the Lions shelter that were just suddenly appeared? Paul was involved in this and helped sort of get some information. Took about 4 weeks, but it seems as though there was a complaint over summer that elderly people were sitting on the concrete in the Lions shelter. No one believes it, so we still don't know how the decision was made to put those two inaccessible tables into an area that's been used as open space since the 1980s. And I guess that's part of what we need to say is why are these tables still being rolled out?
I might leave that one. I just noticed Glenn put his hand up briefly.
Glenn?
You actually brought it up, the crossbar.
Yeah.
Right.
I know myself, I quite often have lunch down at the Royal Hotel in the beer garden. I'm trying to get my left leg up and over with those chairs if possible.
Yeah.
You're not the only one, Glenn.
No, and falling backwards and hitting your head on the concrete's not pleasant either.
Yeah. No. And see, Mark, it's not only about wheelchair users as well. It's can be as simple as someone having a sprained ankle or a wonky knee, trying to get their legs sort of over it. But these two particular picnic tables haven't even got an extended end. They're just totally inaccessible.
I don't know where they've come from.
No, I mean, it's not your area. It's not your area at all. But that was the reason given, that there'd been a complaint that elderly people were sitting on the concrete. It'd be the first time since 1988 when they were first put up that it's happened.
If you can see that, that's the plan. This is not current though. There's been some suggested improvements to this. So that's the layout. And in section, if you tilt your head sideways, that's not the bars you're talking about, are they? Or
no, it looks like it doesn't have the bars.
Yeah.
But Mark, even with the long flat seat, the length of the table, I struggle to get my left leg up and over it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand. Yep.
Okay, so a session on that would be great, and maybe with someone like Jane Johnson, Mark, because she does all the picnic tables.
Well, certainly we could. Yeah, I can throw that send the drawings to you, and we can come
Okay.
back with some comments, and then sort of
Go from there.
liaise with Jane offline, and yeah.
She has been through a process, but I think we haven't quite nailed it yet.
Yeah.
I think we also had a previous discussion that one of the reasons that some non-accessible tables were still being used or newly put in was because there was a procurement process where a certain tender had gone out and a number had been purchased years ago or agreement to, and so they couldn't be changed. Whereas I would say, in light of what Pauline is saying, is that we need to re-challenge that. So there's no point in us sitting back and accepting that some new tables are not going to be accessible because there was a financial decision made some time ago. I would say the pressure needs to be on council to re-look at that procurement process and see how to get out of it or how to make changes to what's being ordered so that they're all accessible. Because the problem with having one accessible and 3 not in any playground is if you turn up and you can only sit on the accessible one and there's already people there, you can't go up to them and say, hey, you don't need accessible. Will you go and sit on the other one and let me move in? It's just not how community works very well.
Yeah. It's to me, it's a little bit like the legacy project that is the Rye Foreshore. That, unfortunately, there's going to be probably just a little bit of time in between the old and embracing the new. I keep talking to the CEO about a number of things, specifically roads, and I just say from now on, whenever we build a road, we should just simply build bike paths on it, because that makes sense. But they come back to me saying it's too expensive and you can't do it on every road. And my view is, if we roll out seats, or picnic tables, they're UD. From now on, not let's run out the old stock and start the new. Let's use the old stock as bonfires and just roll out the new. But there's a cost to it, and there's a timing issue. And but I'm sure Virginia's on it. I'm certainly going to be complaining loud about it, because it's pointless using them when we know that they're no good.
They're not fit for purpose.
And I think it's the fact that if new picnic tables are being rolled out now, it's going to be another 15 years before they're changed over, at least, and that's the minimum. I mean, some of the tables we've got are probably date back to the 70s, and it doesn't send a good message. I mean, if we're talking about being inclusive and access, then it needs to be overtly demonstrated, and it's a very simple way to demonstrate it is through picnic tables.
I'll do some chasing on I'll do some chasing on that procurement comment, because we don't have anywhere to store tables, so I don't know that that's the correct comment. So and these ones are fabricated, like we make them, so it's all treated pine timber, and they're made on site. So certainly not a case of ordering a product and having a stock of them sitting around.
I don't think that was the issue. I think it was more the fabricator. The contract was with the fabricator.
And he wasn't prepared to adapt. It was certainly at that stage, and this is going back how many years? I mean,
2019, I think.
And we've been doing it since before then as well. So that's why my voice gets a little bit exasperated at times.
Picnic furniture has actually been an issue highlighted in the previous disability inclusion plan, so not just this one. That's
right.
Yeah.
Be addressing. So.
I think though that now that council has adopted the universal design, it gives a big, powerful message that says it's not okay. This doesn't meet, even if it is that the current contractor can't do it, we need to change. That's not going to do it. That's where I think Pauline is saying we now have the power to be able to, to veto and say this needs to be different.
Well, it's the line in the sand, isn't it?
It is. It absolutely is, because I have considered, and I may yet do it, actually lodging a human rights complaint. Because if I think of the length of time we've been trying to fight for a foreshore for all, and the length of time each time we get sabotaged, then I think it's a human rights issue. And and I'll decide in the next 24 hours whether I'll do that. I mean, I was encouraged by what Pauline said,
Yes, me
but
too.
it would be good to see the proof in the pudding.
Does anybody else have their hand up for anything? I can't see that.
Glenn's just offered to volunteer.
Oh, good. Thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, well, because I know how hard it is getting in there. Those.
Yes, they're very awkward.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a visual thing that needs to be shown to people before they get the problem. And then they go, oh, right, now I see.
Well,
And
maybe someone needs to actually literally wear a helmet when they're doing those ones that were put out at Blairgowrie, because they are an absolute shocker.
At Blairgowrie, yeah, right. Okay, well, there's a plan.
There's a good plan. We've got half an hour, and I'm just wondering which way we'll go now.
One quick thing I just wanted to mention was the easy read terms of reference that I sent out as an attachment with the agenda. If anyone has had a chance to look at that, I think Glenn, you read it the other day. Did you find it?
My support worker read it and she said it was laid out perfectly.
Okay, made sense.
Have you had people with intellectual disability reading it through it?
Not yet. That's going to be done by Scope, but I just thought I'd send it to you all for a look over before we finalise the document.
I thought I read it and thought it was really good. I did have just one suggestion that might need some clarification. On page 4, it says the group gives advice to the council about what they need in the community, what it's like to live with a disability, what they find hard and what could be done better. I just wonder if it could read what they find hard in the community.
Okay.
Just to help give some direction on not what you find hard in anything in life,
general,
but
yeah,
specifically about what's going to relate to what this DAC is about.
Yep, great. Thank
Otherwise,
you.
I thought it was fabulous, and I think it's great that Scope are going to test run it.
Yeah. Michelle?
I haven't read it in great detail. I mean, I think it's a terrific initiative, but I just wonder if it's a bit long. That's the only thing. I haven't looked at to see if information could be cut out, but I just had the sense that there just might have been too much there, that it could lose people as they were starting to go through it.
Maybe if you want to have a look through and see what you cut out.
Okay.
Yeah, because I get what you're saying, but I guess it's the nature of
and that's what I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe we can talk about it, or
internally. Yeah. I think so.
Thanks.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Virginia and I had a look through it as well, Michelle, and I was trying to look for opportunity, but it was hard to find anything that could be dropped. It all seemed quite critical, but there was a couple of pieces that Virginia and I found, but always any opportunities to make it succinct as possible is great. So if the DAC members think that there's anything that perhaps doesn't need to be there and could provide that feedback, that'd be wonderful.
But it's great. I mean, it's a terrific initiative, really is.
Better late than never. Okay, thank you. Maybe Sandra, member updates?
Yes, okay, member updates.
Anyone has any?
Well,
Michelle.
I think I've said enough.
No, come on.
I've had my say about the plan, had my say about the furniture. We're trying again to get the playground, the rubber matting on the playground. It's almost as if we've been penalised because community raised the funds and built the playground. I mean, we were told that Blairgowrie went to the top of the list with their $280,000 because they raised $5,000. So that's part of the human rights complaint as well. It's all this. So I guess we just keep trying to push and trying to do what we can. One step forward, 6 back, but hopefully it's 6 steps forward and none back shortly.
So it wasn't Rotary, it was a community build, wasn't it?
It was community. Well, it was community funded. It wasn't Rotary. It wasn't Lions. I mean, they put into it. It was the community that raised the funds.
Whole community.
So it was sponsorship. Those
Those boards.
Posts that are around the playground, palings, people bought them.
Names on them.
So they've got their names on them, and all that require is rubber matting. And there's a ramp there, and then people can use it. I mean, it's not rocket science. So yes. So I think we're making headway. I mean, certainly with the universal design, I've certainly got great hopes that that's going to make a difference, so that no one else or no other town goes through the same things that we've been through over the last 7 years.
Michelle, I think we're hearing a lot of positive energy from people who are in control of areas in Shire, and I'm feeling I think it's a wonderful move forward.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. That's exactly what I'm hoping, Sandra, that we see a big turnaround over the next 12 months.
12 months, yes.
Karen?
Yeah, I attended a co-design workshop thing this morning, a panel discussion that was run by members of VDAC, Victorian Disability Advisory Council. And there's a few takeaways there that I thought were quite interesting around there not being a set process, but also about the emotional labour that people with disabilities have to not just put in, but like the psychological effect of sharing their experiences and how difficult that can be for us, and reliving trauma and things like that. And it just talking about making co-design a safe place for people with disabilities, and recognising the intersectionality of people with disabilities, and just a lot goes through my head when I do this, and there's a lot of things going on after last night's debate too around the perception of people with disabilities and how they might be perceived, and then the response by certain politicians about how people with disabilities get so angry about things, and that's why they're not successful, because they're not, nice enough about the way they deal with things. And I just find that, like, I get that when we're asking for things, and I'm going through a lot mentally at the moment, so I'm going through the whole SDA process, and I've got to say, I'm just absolutely bloody shocked at how little empowerment there is, and how specialist disability accommodation, rather than being purpose-built, is more or less retrofitted to fit a standard or meet a standard, rather than being around what's going to help you, the technology and things that will help you live your best life. There's so much, like, you want some more? What do you want some more for? And let's talk about the nice to haves and the must haves. And I just really struggle with that thing. And just Thanasi saying before, like, now we've got the UD policy, it no longer has to be a nice to have, it can be a must do type thing. And it just, so I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that there is a lot of psychological factors that go into our advocacy sometimes, that, I feel like we're constantly being made to feel like we need to be grateful for every little thing with accessibility. And it's just like, as Michelle said, like, there's a human rights aspect that is often overlooked, and that, accessibility is seen as an additional cost or an additional step, when in actual fact it's a missed step, that hasn't been acknowledged. And so anyway, that's where I'm at. And I've chosen not to reapply for VDAC because I feel like I'm burnt out a little bit, so I'm trying to refocus my life a little bit. So that's where I'm at with that. And we've missed the business grants.
Oh yeah, I was thinking that when you were talking.
Had my pen around that.
Thanks.
Thanks, Karen.
Yeah, and what made me think of it, Karen, when you were talking was, we, with the business grants, we had an assumption that businesses might know what to ask for, and we tried to create that checklist to give them some tips and ideas, but what came through demonstrated that there's really a lack of understanding around basic access, let alone anything beyond that. So yeah, do you want to speak to that, the unofficial outcomes at this point?
Yeah, I can't remember that. I think there might have been the two that we thought were.
We had 7 applications,
yeah.
and 2 didn't meet we didn't feel they met the criteria.
Well, it's even just the old kind of ableism and the narratives that we have to overcome and cure our disabilities. And, you know, like I was a bit shocked with how that, and it made me think that how do, like, someone might pass the criteria of a grant, but they're actually, do you really want to be aligned with that sort of attitude around disability and things like that? But it made me realize how much businesses also need to be a bit more supported around what accessibility means. So they might want to build a ramp, or they might want to modify their toilets, but if they're employing a local builder, like that local builder might not have access to the accessibility standards, and that's an additional cost for that person to access those standards. Yeah, it's the realization that it's a lot more complex and not as easy to fix or provide accessibility solutions. And
that's what Paul and I found. I don't know if Paul's on his emails, but we met in Somerville a couple of weeks ago to look at a shop for the 100 Mile Foodie, and the owner wanted to put a ramp in to make the step accessible, but it's a real conundrum in terms of you can't put it out onto the footpath because it needed to be 2.3 meters to get the right gradient. And then Paul sort of thought maybe you could cut it into the internal floor, and then your new idea, I like that sort of half and half fold up idea, but you know, they're not simple things to fix. So yeah, I've put her in touch with some access consultants, and yeah, just looking at some other ideas that council might be able to do to support businesses to do that problem solving in the first place before they even get to the grant application point.
And Virginia, now that universal design is in place, even any business, whether it be any business on the peninsula, would need to check in with the council to be assured that universal design was a part of their build.
It's really complicated in the private sector because council doesn't have any say over privately owned buildings, really, unless if they're brand new or if they're being built, they have to comply with the standards. But you know, most shops are owned by private landlords, and most shop owners rent the premises, and trying to get anything changed in a rented shop is difficult, let alone something expensive like access. So,
and one of the things we noticed also with bathroom renovations or toilet renovations, unless it triggers a permit requirement, there's actually no requirement for them to meet the disability standards as well. So it's kind of really complex and tricky space to be in. Yes, oh, sorry, I'm not sharing.
No, you're great.
I was just wondering if tackling the chambers of commerce might be a way to go. You know, sort of drawing them in.
I think we need to tackle everything. I had a really good meeting with the tourism team on Monday.
Oh, yeah, what's the update on that?
So they're very keen on promoting accessibility, but they had a really good idea, which is, you know, our own facilities, which we've already started looking at through the UD policy and community halls, but places like the regional gallery, we've had a little bit to do with the Briars. What were the other ones? So the visitors centre, the golf course, you know, they're kind of seen as tourism businesses that the Shire owns. So we should look at making sure that they meet, you know, UD and access standards before we expect businesses to. So definitely got some opportunity there to act on that pretty quickly, I reckon. I haven't had a chat to Kelly yet, so I won't talk to you about
that also feeds into that 10-year asset plan thing, and how, like Pauline was saying, we've got to set our priorities, but we don't know what council priorities are for that the asset management and things like that. So
yeah, and it's a really interesting discussion about what's in and what's out, because obviously safety is usually the number one thing, and buildings deteriorating, but then if access and UD is not being included, why is that not seen as a priority? So yeah, it's need to get that into the thinking of people a bit better. Sorry.
Okay.
What else? Sorry, let's get my agenda up.
I'll help you out, Sandra. DIP and UD updates.
Yes, they're the last bits.
Yeah.
Thanks. So we kind of touched a little bit on the UD stuff with Pauline, and I did write a draft implementation plan for the policy last year, but what we've now done is sent that's going to get sent through to the team that's doing the corporate, or the, what's it called now? Organizational plan that Chris was talking about. So all the things that are in the draft UD plan can be embedded in the organisational plan and then allocated to the various units. And Kelly luckily has a project management background, and we've been trying to put together a template or a framework for the project management plan. So that's the next piece of work that it's just taken a little while with me being off sick, but we'll be pulling a project team together and looking at all of those actions and how to embed them and make sure that they can all be acted on. Some of them are already happening, but it's also going to take a lot of the pressure off me. And we talked about this at the last meeting in terms of trying to keep tabs on everything that's happening across the organisation. So if we are reporting into this new software system, which we haven't purchased yet, but that's the idea that, you know, it'll ask each officer or manager a series of questions that we'll have to answer relating to our role and responsibilities for these other plans. And then that will get populated across all of the different areas. So it won't, you know, it's not just me following up. In my team, we've got the gender equality strategy, health and wellbeing, part of the council wellbeing plan, positive aging, and all of us have to chase, you know, officers up for actions every year and find out what they've been doing. It's really time consuming and really annoying for the officers to have to stop and, you know, think about it and write reports. So hopefully it's going to take a little while to get the software and get it all happening properly, but we're at the beginning of that, which is really exciting. So I can share, I think I did send the draft implementation plan to you all probably last year.
Yeah.
But maybe once we've had a chance to look through that, that'd be a better time to send it to you. And I've also been doing a review of the disability inclusion plan, and I sent out an email to all sort of team leaders and managers the other day asking for any other actions that might be outside of the disability inclusion plan, because, you know, that was written 4 years ago and some of the actions are outdated, some of them have been completed. It's not capturing everything that we're doing. So I've asked for a bit more information, and already something's come back around Meals on Wheels and people with disabilities being involved in helping to deliver Meals on Wheels. So that's something I didn't know about. It's great that that's happening. So I'm sure there's other examples of that across the organisation, and that's what we'd like to include in the next disability inclusion plan as well. And I've got some ideas around that. I don't know if it's too soon to start sharing my thoughts around the next disability inclusion plan, because I just wanted to actually reflect on that timeline that we came up with. It's on the second page of the agenda for 2022. So I think it was January when Karen and Sandra and I met to talk about what we were going to suggest as priorities for the DAC, and then we brought it to that January meeting for you all to discuss. So I think we're sort of tracking reasonably well with what we said that we'd do. We could probably do a little bit more closing of the loop around past projects. And we did have an issues log that I'm happy to send out again to share with you all. And then I'm just looking at the timeline section. We wanted more feedback on RIE, playgrounds and toilet strategy. We've got a little bit of that today. And I mentioned before, the toilet strategy is not going to, the writing of that is not going to continue at the moment, which is a really big shame.
Virginia, who made that decision?
Look, it was a temporary position anyway for the person who was being responsible for that. I think it was a 6-month role, and they ended up only having 3 of those 6 months. I think, I'm not sure why, but but they've now moved into a different department. So she did a great job, I believe, of mapping all the existing toilet infrastructure. And the person, her name's Belinda, I was trying to get her to come to our meeting, but because she's moving into a different role, she sort of wasn't able to. She's on leave this week. But her husband is a paraplegic, so it gives her an added advantage and insight into accessibility. So she'd mapped all the toilets that the Shire is responsible for, as well as some of the public ones in shopping centres and places like that, and looked at it from parking to pathways to, you know, steps, measurements of ambulant toilets, measurements of accessible toilets. So I haven't seen that report yet, but apparently it's nearly finished. So I'm hoping, yeah, I'll get permission to share that with you. But I think it would be it's a really great resource. And she's also updated the National Public Toilet Map at the same time. So all the details that and the GIS, which is our mapping system. So she's now mapped all of that, which is such a huge advantage, because, you know, even with the Rye foreshore, we didn't know a couple of years ago whether there were any accessible toilets in the camping area. And now we'll have that information through Belinda's work. So even though it's only been a short time and she's not going to get to write the toilet strategy, she's done a great job of finding out what's there. So I guess that's the starting point.
It's big.
Yeah, big piece of work. I forgot to mention something. Sorry, I'm jumping around. With the universal design implementation, a really big part of that work is developing guidelines around UD. And I think I've told you a few times, we've engaged Architecture and Access to help draft those. And they are the same company that worked with Cardinia on their universal design standard. They've sent through a draft of what it might look like. And rather than send that through to you, because I feel like if I send it to you, you'd all kind of go, hang on a minute, what's that? I just wanted to explain it a little bit first. And what it showed to me is we're going to have to rationalise and prioritise which aspects of the built environment we want to look at first. And I think, you know, we've been talking about picnic tables a lot, so that's really high on the agenda. I think toilets is another really important one. So I've got quite a long list of all the different areas that we could look at. But what I'd like to do with anyone that's interested from this committee, and potentially internally as well, is meet with Architecture and Access and talk about our priority list, and then talk about how that information is going to be written up. So they've come up with a suggestion. I don't think it's amazing. And when Glenn was talking about volunteering himself with the picnic tables, and, you know, I was sort of immediately picturing a little video or a series of photos to demonstrate. And, you know, we might not be able to do all of that for all the things straight away, but I want a guide that kind of shows a little bit of the do's and don'ts visually, as well as with dot points, because I think it's got to, I keep thinking of the end user, and it's busy project managers like Nassi and Mark's, people in Mark's team. They need to be able to pick up the guidelines and understand pretty much immediately what to do and what not to do, and why. Would you agree, Mark? It's got to be useful and meaningful to the people that we want to follow it. So I'd love some of you to be involved in it. I know it's extra work for committee members, and you can sort of decide how much or how little you want to know about it. But I guess before I dumped it all on you, I sort of wanted to see if you'd be interested in coming along to a meeting with the architecture firm. And I have got one set up on the 4th of May at 1 o'clock, which I'll send it out to all of you, whoever is available. But yeah, that's where we're getting to with that. So yeah, I guess I'm calling them deliverables. They're things that with the UD policy we're having to deliver on. So there's the guidelines. There's the next thing is a training package to explain to council staff what universal design is. And as part of that, we're going to look at further developing those personas that the Auckland City Council came up with that explain the needs of different people. So again, pictures, minimal text, making it sort of visual and instantly recognizable and easy to understand. Yeah. And showing that universality, you know, wide doors and automatic wide doors and paths of travel are good for wheelchairs, but they're also good for ambulance officers and delivery people and people with prams. So it's demonstrating what universal design is, and then, you know, a way of different teams being able to relate that back to the work that they do and seeing how it fits. Yeah. So there's heaps of work to do in that space. It's probably going to take a few years, if I'm honest, but yeah, really excited about getting to this point and having the policy adopted, getting the green light, getting the support, and just being able to do all of the work now. It's really good.
Yep.
Virginia, as you were talking, and we can chat more offline about this, and I'm not sure if you've done this already, but perhaps when we're looking over the implementation plan, we could just highlight where we think it's going to be really helpful for DAC to consult with DAC, like this meeting with architecture and access, and maybe we can map that out together a bit so that, and you know, there might be other things that pop up, that other opportunities as we go, but maybe if we map that out a bit for DAC members, and then you can all know sort of what's coming up, particular areas of interest that you might be interested in being a part of as well, so that DAC members can sort of prioritise their time or what in particular they might be interested in being involved with.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thanks, Kelly.
We can chat more about that.
I need that help. And Karen mentioned co-design. I was at that workshop too, and that's something that I'd really like to explore for some of these things, is, you know, a genuine co-design process with members of the community and broader than just the DAC. Obviously DAC key, but I've been flagging that a lot with our community engagement team and just kind of getting them ready for the fact that I'd like to introduce that to some of the way that we work as well.
Sorry, can I just say something?
Of course.
We were talking about the dip and how it's coming towards its end and we need to start. It would have been good to have Paul in here actually to talk about some of the things that have been really sadly neglected throughout the last dip, and things that maybe that's something that the DAC need to look at. How do we prioritise it and things like that? So, you know, we're still talking how many years later that driver's license are a requirement of employment, and it's ridiculous. And if it's simply because you need a driver's license to check out a Shire vehicle, well then that should be not a condition of employment, but what do you call it? A heads up. Do you know what I mean? I can't think what the word is, but if you need, and that other thing is that if it's a requirement that if you need to travel for work that you must use a Shire vehicle, well that's a barrier to employment for people who don't drive, whether they've got a disability or not. So what's the workaround? There needs to be already a workaround, that's solution that's already there. So that shouldn't be a barrier to applying for a job. So that's so
would it be possible for us to go through the last dip and look at what was achieved and what was left out? And that might help inform us looking at priorities.
I think it would be a really great idea.
Yeah.
And also when we do the dip, sorry, this is probably a thing for another day, but talking to Paul, talking about conversations, I think it would be really good to have all the different councillors from various wards, and we do one-on-one meetings perhaps with them and talk about things, because I'm sure that they're approached from time to time about access issues from their, what do you call them, constituents, or are they and so that, or it might be just a learning curve for them too, so that.
Well, I think you're right, Karen, and I think that whole organisational chart within the Shire, that whole management system has undergone great changes in the last year, if not two, and they're still finding their feet. So it'd be really good to tap into that, I think.
From across the board,
across the board. And I wondered what and how advocacy, the Shire's advocacy area, can help DAC.
So there are advocacy issues that have been chosen. I don't know if Chris can speak to any of this.
We don't have the full list in front of me, but definitely it's an entire organisational approach,
Yes.
Sandra.
Yes.
So we use all our teams, including our advocacy team, as part of delivering on our disability inclusion plan. I just don't have the specifics in front of me unless you've got them there, Virginia.
I'm just looking at the web page. So they're similar to, so the main ones are arts and culture, coastal management, digital connectivity, peninsula trail, peri-regional, and recycled water. So not a lot of access in there.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, they're the main ones, and Paul can probably jump in here a little bit as well, that council have decided leading up to the election process that council want to focus on. That doesn't mean we're not advocating for access in other areas and other bits of advocacy.
No,
They're just council's main 10 focus up to the election.
Yes.
But Paul, you might want to jump in there too.
I think you said it well, Chris. I mean, you know, basically, there's been a lot of talk about it. Apparently there's a couple of elections coming up. I think we're focusing on it too much personally, but that's, you know, my opinion. I'd rather get on with the work and do the work. But those 6 advocacy points were very specifically to, you know, if we had the opportunity of talking to federal ministers or state ministers, you know, they were to the front of our minds. There's also some other ones, some slightly minor ones. So there's probably 12 all up. But they're very much focused on the election, whereas I do believe, you know, the universal design and accessibility for all is a day-to-day constant advocacy platform for all of us, all of the councillors and the council.
Paul and Chris, maybe you can answer this too, but the advocacy group is more advocating outside of the Shire, isn't it? So it's advocating to state government or federal government or
local and state and federal.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in here, but yeah, we obviously don't necessarily need to advocate to ourselves. That's something within our own remit.
That's what I was trying to clarify.
It's externally focused, mainly around Commonwealth or state government.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just noticing we're losing a few people because we've gone over time.
I know, we have gone over time.
There's a lot to discuss.
There always is, but I'm happy to come next time with the DAC actions, because we're in the process of reviewing the annual action plan, and I'm doing a bigger look at the whole 4 years, so I can send out a summary before the next meeting of what we've achieved and what we haven't, and we can discuss that at the next meeting if you'd like to do that.
And you've got group photo here and a question mark.
Oh, I'd love to get a group photo, especially before Karen leaves.
Karen leaves, yes.
If you are leaving, you don't have to leave, Karen.
No, you don't.
I'm leaving the peninsula, but not necessarily the day. I might hang around and hold you to account a bit more for longer.
Please do.
Until I get more changing places toilet. I'm not damn well leaving this community, all right?
Don't leave me.
Well, because it goes to, like, when I visit, I'm going to need a changing places toilet now. Aren't I?
That's right. And a picnic table.
Yes. So it would be nice to get together in person, even if we made it a social something. So yeah, maybe if you've got any bright ideas. I know we've talked about this and there's still concern around COVID for a lot of people, so I'm happy to try and work around that, but just thought it might be nice to try and get together.
Yeah, well, that's probably another point of thing. Like, has the Shire got any like huge outdoor pavilions and things like that with accessible pavilions?
There is something at the Briars. It's a big marquee that's sort of permanently there.
But it's not easily accessible, Virginia.
It's not?
No, it's horrific, actually. You've got to go down a couple of slopes.
Yeah, you can drive. Oh, yeah, you're right. I'm thinking of... Yeah, okay. We might have to do a little audit there. I know there's slopes on one side, but I'm pretty sure it's flat-ish at the entrance.
It is, but from the car park to get down to it is
up the top. What if you parked closer to Josephine's? I mean, not just to the homestead.
That might work. It's worth looking into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Lots to do.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Mm. Does anybody else have anything to say before we end our meeting today?
Just that it was a really productive meeting, and I think
It was
that,
great. Yeah, it was good.
It was a great.
I really enjoyed it. And, thanks for letting me join in.
Oh, thanks for being
Pleasure.
here. Yeah, you're not getting off the hook, by the way.
Uh,
No.
I've written down notes. I'm writing Virginia an email.
Terrific. Okay. Okay, shall we call it terminate our meeting?
We can.
call it to a close. No, I don't like
Closure. I actually can't stand that word, but anyway, lovely to see you all, and we'll see you
Yeah, same here.
on the 19th of May, if not before.
Hey, well done, Sandra. Well done
Thanks,
for
Sandra.
good sharing.
Yes. Yep.
Thank
It was
you.
great.
Good job.
It's a bit frightening, Karen. Don't go.
It's fine. It's fine. You'll get, like, it's fine.
Yeah.